up permitting. But it's irresponsible to let someone get a permit to do their addition and get the addition up. You know, you poured your beams and you got your first floor up and you call for your structural inspection, and all of a sudden someone figures out, oh no, you're not high enough. And they make you stop and tear it all down because you didn't meet the current code. So we have to have some system in place to verify, are you in the 100 or are you in the 500? Okay? And how are you going to see what's the 500-year mark for what it is that you're doing? So it will cause an immediate hold if you go to re-pour your driveway over there. There's going to be a small hold. Anticipate some. Now, we have these holes in historic districts. They can be removed in under, a few hours. They're an automatic hold of things on a historic district. And when you just want to go add your ceiling fan to your porch, they remove it immediately and it's not impacted. So although you're going to have some hold over here, it's not going to impact you if you're just changing out your water heater, or air conditioner, or toilet or something. But it will be a new level of scrutiny for houses in 100 and 500-year floodplain.
There was some discussion about whether we would allow driveways to be poured. Why not have something porous?
I'll explain that when we get to that section.
Oh.
Okay, so expect some problems over here. On the elevation certificates, which you're going to get in the 100, because we've always got them in the 100, you're going to have to mark, you're going to have to request, you're going to have to require the title company, they're going to have to understand to mark the 500-year watermark. Okay? So here is a survey of a house in Grays Heights, and it tells me the 100-year base flood elevation. That's lovely, except I need to know more because I can't do anything with that anymore. That's just to get my initial insurance. And here's the 500-year mark on my survey. Every survey in the 100-year floodplain and 500-year floodplain needs this information now, right? We need to know it. We want to hold the surveyors accountable. I don't want to be responsible over there. You're going to have to mark the 500-year water level on the surveys in the 100-year floodplain and the 500-year floodplain. You need to do that? Absolutely. Hopefully, it'll start being, it's just going to be confusing in these first few months or whatever. Hopefully, over time, we're going to get to this because everyone's going to ask for it, right? Everyone's going to be very educated about the 100-year and the 500-year, and they're going to ask for it. But until then, we're just going to have to educate as many of these title companies and as many of these surveyors as possible. You need this information. Even if you're doing nothing. I'm selling a house in Oak Forest and I don't intend to do anything. Someday you're going to sell it. And the guy who's buying it wants to know this information. So you better know now than later. The guy next door to you's got a similar number. So when they do something, be realistic. You see your house next door is a tear down, it's going to be significantly higher than you are, right? It's going to layer over your house if it's built to that deal. You have to mark this. If I can stress enough, you're going to have to mark the 500-year watermark in the 100 and in the 500. Okay. We also need to be specialists in elevation certificates. So we're still going to get these elevation certificates. I'm hoping we get the elevation certificates in the 500-year floodplain, but until then, we're just going to, you're going to get it in the 100-year floodplain. You need to know the base flood elevation to get your flood insurance today, although I could care, like I say, that's just to get initial flood insurance or to renew your flood insurance. Doesn't have anything to do with the city code. But you're going to have to understand and be able to read where are all these measurements. What's in the floodplain? And then let's be realistic. We can build a house that's 20 feet up in the air. The garages are going to be down in the floodplain, right? In every one of these areas, we know the garage is going to be there. It impacts you more if the garage is connected or not connected, but you're going to need to know, and are your air conditioning units, and where are they? Are they going to be down in the floodplain, or are they going to be raised up? Today, we're not regulating in the single-family residences that the air conditioners be raised 2 feet above the 500-year mark. They're letting your air conditioning flood, but I don't know that that's going to, I think that was an initial oversight, and I think that'll also be changed relatively quickly. So you're going to get used to Timber Grove air conditioners being 8 feet up in the air, which now you're going to see your next door neighbor's air conditioning unit, and you're sure as hell going to hear it, right? No way around it. It'll be interesting to see how that works. So you've got to figure out how to read these better. So you've got to figure out where you're at. This is your basic condominium or something, where you're at grade. Here's grade at the bottom of the first floor, and maybe you're on the second floor, but your AC units, parking garage or something is down at grade. So this is your basic sort of condominium. This is your basic slab house. You've got a grade. You got the bottom of the first floor. So this is, the bottom of your slab here. And then this is the bottom of your next floor here. So this is your version of a slab house. Then we go to the pier and beam house. So here we have our grade. Here we have the bottom of the first floor. Here's where we have our townhouse raised up. We have our garage connected, or we have something else like this. Even these structures that you're getting in Meyerland, when you're raising them up 12 feet, and then they have a code that you must enclose that. Well, now what are we getting down there? We're getting these latticed playrooms for kids underneath the houses. It's going to be storage, but you're going to have things down there. So what is this enclosure that you have? Basically, this is the garage, or this is where the AC units might be. So I simplified it and made it just like that. So you'll be focusing on the base flood elevation, but what you really want to know is the 500-year mark, and then you're going to calculate 2 feet above that. So we've got a couple of examples for you. Here is a townhouse in basically Shady Acres. Here's where the base flood elevation for this house, this is the bottom of the first floor. The base flood elevation is at 57.4. That's the base flood elevation. I think that sounds okay. The 500-year mark in this particular instance is at 58.5. 2 feet above that, 60.5, right? Let's be clear. But I think the days of these townhouses built at grade are about done. You're going to end up with this version. You're going to have 3 steps up to your front door. Your garage is going to be down at grade or whatever, and your townhouse itself is going to get higher, especially throughout most of the inner city. And I think this is going to be safer for most people anyway. So here you have this elevation certificate, and we're going to have, here's the bottom of our first floor. It's way down here. This is where our garage is. So it's here. But our house is really up here. So when you go to their elevation certificate, I think that's what's next. It's showing, let's see what's next. So this is telling me base flood elevation was at 51. The top of the bottom floor here is at 50. So I'm already below the base flood elevation, right, of this particular house, and everything else is lower than that. This is a different one. Yeah, that's not the same. Okay, so we didn't, whatever. You understand what I'm saying? Base flood elevation's here. Your garage is down here. We already know at 500 you're supposed to be here, and 2 feet above that you're supposed to be there. So while that townhouse on Crouch had a very low flood insurance rate today, it's soon not going to have a very low flood insurance rate, right? This is where? Ours, okay. So this base flood elevation of 500-year are about the same, not too bad there, but 2 feet above that. So here's this house that was already 1 foot below the base flood elevation of the current old map. 1 foot below, so you knew the insurance was already higher here. So when you start talking about going to 51.9 and 2 feet above that, now you're 4 feet below the new base flood elevation if you're using 500 as the mark. Okay? And this is in Candlelight. Oh, I was very surprised. The distance, Shady Acres is a big gap, I'm telling you. The difference between the 100-year base flood elevation and 500-year marks, fairly significant in Timber Grove, West 16th Street, West 22nd Street. It's bigger than you think. So here's one, base flood elevation at 67. House is already below all that. It's got serious problems. I don't know how else to say it. Okay, this is the 100 and the 500-year floodplain. 500 mark, 2 feet above that. So let's remember 60% of all the structures were outside of the floodplain, right? They weren't even in the floodplain. What are we going to do about that? What we have now is a little confusing. So currently, you have to be 4 inches above the crown of the street or 12 inches above the nearest manhole, if you can even find a manhole. I've been trying, it's not that easy. Half the time, so this is a house we just had an issue with it last week. This is on Alston. Absolutely no curb. Half of my world doesn't have a curb. No manhole in sight around here. How the hell can you even find the nearest manhole? It's about half a mile from here. So what are you going to use as the basis? I think the current rule that we have, and I brought the building code with us, it's just too complicated. So here's what I think is going to happen. Now, I will tell you there will be more community input, more dialogue, and more opportunity for input on this change than there was the last change. And the reason I don't think there were a lot of community meetings, the mayor had his CIP meetings. He went to 12 community meetings. He got his butt chewed out every day about the flooding. And so he was hearing from the people. There wasn't a lot of need because this was the most drastic areas of the city. It was just easier to go and do something. I think you're going to see from the crown of the street, it may not always be in the middle, but from the crown of the street, forget the curb, forget the manhole, and you're going to go somewhere close to 18 inches. So the bottom of your slab is going to be 18 inches from the crown of the street, which is about 6 inches higher than what we average today. Okay? There'll be some discussion going to 24, be some staying at 12. I think you'll see these foundations be 18 inches above the crown of the street. I think it'll be voted on sometime this year. I think it'll go into effect sometime next year. So this is every area outside of the floodplain, which basically when you do this and you deal with drainage, you're not going to get a lot of foundations that are slab here either. And you can because you don't have the no net fill rule in play outside of the floodplain. So while you could, now, if you have a typical slab, no matter what it is, the amount of concrete isn't 8 inches or 24 inches or 36 inches is too expensive. You put in ash and you put in dirt, you fill in the difference, and your concrete is a reasonable amount over there. So the net fill or the fill issue is the debate outside of the floodplains. Okay? That'll be the largest debate because that will determine the type of foundation that you have and the affordability of those houses. So you're going to need to understand fill. Of course, pier and beam, you don't have any real fill issues, right? And in reality, the city understands while we don't want ponding under the house, the way the sheet flow works, the water in this scenario would be able to rise from your street and rise underneath your house, which they feel to be safer than getting into your house. Okay? So certainly a movement for pier and beam, a requirement for pier and beam, the 100, the 500, and a movement to more pier and beam structures where certainly where the land is low. There are many, the thing that it's very hard to explain even to the city council member, you can take the average street on Leland and you can take one block and the difference of this side is 4 feet higher than this side. And from the 100 block to the 200 block, you shift another 4 or 5 feet. So, it's dependent upon your lot, how it works over here. But yes, we always have this impervious cover deal, and we've been focusing on it a little bit more. You're going to see more and more with regards to the amount of impervious cover that you can have. Basically, you can cover about 65% today. But you will see some changes to the impervious cover rule. And then you're going to soon find the enforcement of the drainage requirements. So here's the basic house, and here's how the water is designed to flow. Not one drop of water can land on your property and touch an abutting property owner. The water must collect on your property and drain to the front of your house. And this is how it does it. And there is a percentage slope, so it's designed to flow away from your slab and away from the property and down the middle here in the back. This is designed to show you how it would work. So these houses that are at 3 feet and the overhangs at 1.5 feet there, and it rains and the water shoots onto the abutting property owner, they're going to have an enforcement mechanism to stop that, okay? Which there's no great incentive for enforcement if there's not a fine or something associated with it, right? And you have to be able to enforce it. You can't just give them a red tag and say your water is impacting me next door. You're gonna have a mechanism to enforce it more. So what we have is the basic builder doing this, and then all of a sudden you build a fence on either side of the property, you build up the landscaping, the water has nowhere to go, and it leads on over into your property, your next door neighbor. There will be a swift crackdown of these sort of things. The people that are flowing back to the alley versus to the street, and the people who are illegally filling in the ditches in the front of their house. It'll be the largest crackdown that we have.
Why is the city allowing any slabs anymore?
Because it's less expensive. It makes them more affordable. There are people that prefer slab house. People with disabilities. People don't want to go up 6 steps. They find it easier to heat and cool. There's lots of reasons why people would want a slab house. And the city shouldn't mandate that you can't have that. The city's primary responsibility should be the safety of its individuals, from its police force, and fire force, and building codes, should protect people, but not adversely take away their property rights. So they're not trying to do that. I don't think there's any massive movement to say people can't do what they want on their property. They do have to keep them safe, and the people that you sell it to 10 years now, and they got to keep the next door neighbors safe. Yes, Mayor? There is. There's a group working on how to address it. Same thing. I think these garages are going to get bigger, and we're going to have these ramps in the back of your garage that's going to get you into this house that's now 4 or 5 feet up higher. You're going to see some of these other changes that make it easier to be more ADA compliant, but I don't think it's all worked out yet, by any means. Okay. Then let's go down the insurance path a moment. People in Houston, Texas, if you own a car and you live anywhere, you should get flood insurance, okay? And so you're going to see, I hope you read in the paper, you're going to see all these billboards go up here in just a few months or whatever, promoting insurance. And these are going to be all over the interstate system and everywhere about the importance of getting flood insurance. The more people that get flood insurance, make it cheaper for all of us. And it just makes common sense based on the information that we have. 83% of the 1.4 million people in the city did not have flood insurance. 83% did not. It's a lot of people. And remember, more structures flooded outside the floodplain than inside the floodplain. And the average rate, what they say, was about $60 a month for the average person. The average plan is about $43,000. So the higher you are, the cheaper the flood insurance. Let's just put it that way. I'm not a flood expert over here on flood insurance, but I do know the higher you are, the safer it is, and the least expensive the flood insurance is. So there's going to have to be a balance between how high you are and what makes sense, but we talked about that a little bit. Okay, so kind of in summary over here, get off the base flood elevation and figure out the 500-year flood mark. That's the most important thing today. And you're going to have to disclose to people what's the impact of the future of their land with regards to renovations, improvements. Let's just say these same houses that hurried up and remodeled after Harvey, now they flood again in August. They're $189,000 up somewhere, and you know that they did more than $75,000 or $80,000 worth of renovation. They're not going to be able to get a permit without raising those houses or tearing them down and rebuilding them. We let too many houses remodel too quickly. I think we did. I think it's irresponsible. I think they sell them too quickly to people who are poor suckers who are going to flood in the near future. And I don't think it looks good for the city. I don't think it looks good from the nation to let us do that anymore. So we all need flood insurance. We all need to understand the 100 and the 500 year. We all need to know that something's happening outside the 100 and 500. It's happening this year. Okay. How about some questions? Yes, John.
Do you have any insider thoughts on this to expand into other parts of Harris County or the other incorporated cities in Harris County?
Us taking in more property and annexing more property?
The 500 year.
What was the exact, do I think the city's gonna annex more property
No,
there?
not annex, but what the incorporated cities within Harris County, but others.
Bel Air, Westview, Hunters Creek, and all those areas that are in town? Yes. Do I think they're gonna adopt the same thing? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yeah.
So the basic floodplain plus a foot plus 2 feet.
Forget the 1 foot rule anymore.
Plus 2 feet. That doesn't mean that if you build your house 2 feet higher, it's out of the floodplain.
You gotta know where the watermark is. You gotta know where the 500 mark is to determine the base from where you're gonna start the 2 feet. That's not 2 feet off the ground.
Right.
It's 2 feet off of wherever the 500-year watermark is.
Yeah, but to make it easier for the general public, would they not do a map that says if you live in Meyerland, you're gonna have to be 12 feet above?
Every lot's different.
Oh,
Every lot's different. On West Temple, every lot's different. They're not the same height. The west side is one side, it's different from the east side. It's too difficult to have a blanket statement that says all these houses are gonna be 6 feet off the ground. It didn't work that way. And they're not doing them all at the same time, they're doing things at different times. History.
So we've heard a lot about costs that are going to be increased with the new regulations. Is there going to be any sort of incentive program? Is there been any discussion about?
There is a trickle of money which is insignificant to help people who are at the lower income levels of our city to help deal with some of it. But no, there's no real incentive to help people. It's just a resiliency effort. It's like adding a seatbelt to your car. It costs money, but you're now required to wear the seatbelt. Now you're required to build and remodel at this level. Yes?
You mentioned on the James map, the pixel value, that the number for the 500 year.
Yep.
Is that, that was kind of blurry.
It's basically this is the 500-year mark, right? This was where so your base flood elevation could be at 67 or 68 or 65. So this is where the watermark is. This is the 500-year watermark.
Currently. Or these
Based on the information, no, based on historical data that we have, this is the 500-year watermark.
Okay, so, but then you say that the FEMA maps are gonna change. Will
And
that
they'll
number
probably
change?
most likely look like this. Once they adapt, when we adopt a new FEMA map, and if this is at 68.9, this number's gonna go to 68.9.
And that's gonna be the 5-year mark.
It is the 500-year mark, but hopefully that'll become the new base flood elevation. And we can go back to the way we used to do it of using the base flood elevation. Because now you're gonna be in the 100-year floodplain with the new base flood, because that would be the base flood. So we're arbitrarily picking a number, the 500-year mark, to create what used to be the base flood elevation. So that was the mark at which you would be safe. We know that's too low now, so this is the new base flood elevation in the 500.
Okay, regardless of what they say before this, you open these maps and then you get the 100 and the 500.
You see them?
So you say right now, whether you are in the blue or light blue, you are or you're not.
Yes.
This pixel value is the new number.
It's the 500-year mark. It's the mark at
The
which.
new one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's the latest information that we have
Okay.
regarding water at a 24-hour time frame in a particular area.
That will become the new.
Well, I can't say that FEMA is exactly going to adopt that. I don't want to say that. I'm saying FEMA is going to adopt a map and it's going to be close to this. And when they adopt that map, this number won't make any difference anymore. You have to add 2 to this to get the new regulation. So yeah, I don't know what the FEMA map's going to say. But yeah, someone's pretty smart has decided that this is a number that keeps you out of harm's way. Let's hope the new maps say the same thing. Did I answer your question though? This is how far you are off the ground. This is how far that mark is off the ground, and you're going to be 2 feet above that. So this tells me that wherever this is, biking over there in Oak Forest, the average house, if it were new, is going to be somewhere between 5 and 6 feet off the ground.
Okay.
And the additions greater than a third are going to be this high.
Board of Engineers is going to do a adjacent counties to withdraw the map. Assuming they were part of this study that came up with these 500-year.
They were. We've used their preliminary numbers that had come out that were in a draft that was in a comment period. So we basically used those numbers, and those numbers can adjust. Nobody knows exactly, And so you can take. Let's pretend we go to Bray's Bayou. There wasn't any flooding on Sims Bayou. That project was finished. So you could complete Bray's Bayou, and the quantity of land could be reduced in the 100 and the 500 year, right? I mean, it could be. You get deeper, you get wider on a bayou, you could pull these houses out of the floodplain, which could be a positive sign. So there will be some reduction based on what they do, but I don't think they're going to do anything quick enough. But it's going to get larger and deeper because of the intensity of the rainfall that's not reflected in the current map.
We know what the timeline is.
1 to 4 years is the basic answer.
So it's a moving target.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely.
So I'm about to build
Are you in the 100 or the 500?
100. So
Then the likelihood when you calculate the new rain intensity, okay, with what we've got going on, isn't anything major in your life going to be impacted in the next year? You're not going to get a reservoir next year. We're not going to dredge the reservoir next year. If they do have an economic impact that has across the entire city, so I don't know where your lot is. But the likelihood is that you're still going to need to be at a number fairly higher than you think to keep yourself from having to pay higher federal flood insurance
so
rates.
that's the other question. Regardless of where the high water mark was during Harvey, relative to where I build, if I don't build up to or above the September 1st required elevation, then my premiums will be higher.
They can be higher. I just wanted to say they could be higher. They most likely would. If you use the current rule, let's just say that if you use the current year of 100 plus 1 and the new maps come out, I can say with fair confidence that your flood insurance will be significantly higher than what you thought it was going to be. Now, this number may be too high for you. It may be too high for some people. I want to be clear. It's a pretty high number because it's not really just considering this map that's going to come out in 1 to 4 years. It's thinking about a map 25 or 30 years from now because we're thinking that you want to give that house to your kids or grandkids and we want them not to pay a fortune for flood insurance. So the threshold was not an incremental small increase. It was a relatively large increase. I want to be clear. It may be larger than you really need today, but we're going to make the assumption millions more people are going to move to Houston, Texas, and we're going to get a whole lot more concrete and less green space, right? And with that assumption, you've got to plan for the future. And I think part of this is shifting it. If you're going to go, there's no difference between going 65 miles per hour and 75 miles per hour. You might as well just go. So it's a little higher in some areas than you probably want it to be.
But I guess to be very specific, the Corps of Engineers were consulted when they said
We use
2 feet above the 500 year. We think that that's a safe elevation, and that once we redraw the maps, it won't be any higher.
that's a true statement. Here's what's probably more true. They use their data for sure. They consulted with them, yes. We have enjoyed the lowest federal flood insurance rates that are available in the nation for a city that's the highest prone to flood of any city in the nation. And we have the best rate because of things that we've done. FEMA wrote a letter in support and found the 500 plus 2 to be very favorable to keeping us having the lowest insurance rates in the nation, okay? It was a factor and they're determining what our rate's going to be post-Harvey. They endorsed the 500 plus 2. Now, that doesn't mean that the map's going to say you're going to need to be at this deal. I think every map's going to move a little bit. I don't think it's going to be across the board 1 foot higher or 2 foot higher. You can look back at that original map. The difference in the 100 and 500 is between a few inches and 7 feet. I mean, it's a big number across the area. And all of those haven't mapped a significant portion of the impact in the city these days. You know, every day we're filling in drainage ditches and little canals and little things where there used to be a creek bed and now there's 300 houses. I mean, I'm on the planning commission. We replat hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses every other week, you know, which were on beautiful green space with a lot of trees. In the Katy Prairie, the average acre in the Katy Prairie absorbed 10 inches of water in an hour, and that's gone. And every time you take away that sponge and you put on some driveways and streets, that water, which used to be sucked up in the Katy Prairie, shifts over to Cinco Ranch, the lakes of Eldridge, Spring Branch, Brays Bayou, Buffalo Bayou, downtown, and Galena Park. That's where it went. Had to go somewhere. It wasn't getting sucked up anymore in the sponge.
So are they stopping that replatting?
There's no mechanism to stop the replatting at the moment. There is a mechanism to require greater detention requirements and to hold them more accountable for adverse impact to their abutting neighbors and across the city. I think there's a more comprehensive approach of saying, when you build, this is all trees, and you build these 500 houses here, it impacted the water here and here and here, and we can't just worry about holding their water here. We got to see the impact next door.
And the Katy Prairie Conservancy does that. They buy up more land.
Yeah, but we're just saying in general at Spring Branch or at TC Jester and 34th or whatever. I mean, those subdivisions are what I was mostly talking about. But yeah, good questions. Any more? Yes.
I was looking at some houses in Pleasantville.
Mhm.
A lot of these families haven't seriously started
Right.
to remodel. So should they not be doing that?
I'd look at the map. I would look at the map. I would look at the map and see where they're at. And, you know, I wonder about some of these houses like in Denver Harbor and Cashmere Garden and some of those areas where the value of the structure isn't significant. They're going to be greatly impacted. They could get caught pretty quickly. And there's nothing happening that's not going to cause them to flood this summer. I think a lot of those houses need to be raised.
Because I'm just saying, with their low income, they may not be able to afford this.
Right. Yeah. So,
Regarding Katy
well, this is what I would say about them. I believe we're going to get another reservoir. I mean, I think we will get another reservoir. I think the mayor's committed and the county judge are very committed, and I think the governor's committed to it also. No one wants to jump up and say they're going to pay for the reservoir because they still want someone else to pay for it. So if the county says we're going to build a reservoir, then we don't get the $500 million from the state. So right now it's the chicken and the egg. We all want it, but who's going to pay for it? And I think you'll see the county will come out with their bond election in November, and they're going to do something. And the city's going to have to do something. I don't think a lot of city money is going to go to the reservoir. I think the city will have to upfront, and the mayor announced something yesterday, we're going to have to upfront more of these improvements to the bayous, anticipating that we're going to get repaid back later from the federal government to speed up the project. So I see the city working on bayous and drainage of areas that flooded because the drainage in the streets wasn't sufficient in Brooksmith or in Independence Heights or some of those areas. None of those houses flooded because of a rising bayou. They flooded because there wasn't any place for the water to go. So we need to work on that as a city. The county, whose primary responsibility is flood control management, it is the responsibility of the county, but they also fund very little. The money comes from the federal government, and it's just been hard to get the money. But you're going to get money. The $1 billion they announced, they're getting $1.2 billion from this first round. Most of that's going to go into housing. We got another $1 billion basically earmarked recently. That'll go for some infrastructure projects. So there's plenty of things happening. I just don't think any of them are going to be done by July. I don't think any of them are going to be done by August. So I think those are long-term projects. It's to deepen the existing reservoirs. The strategy is take the 2 existing reservoirs and excavate them and add to their capacity and add another reservoir out west, which saves most of the city. And then do the other things along the bayous and the streets. If you did all those sort of things, we haven't done anything about a surge. from hurricane. So that's another whole problem. But I mean, that at least solves this particular problem. Yes, sir?
How do we get the slides?
If, do you want them to email us or how are you gonna do it?
I'll just email everybody who I emailed to get here. If you're here, then.
Yeah, send me an email and Aaron will email it right back to you. Okay, yes, one more?
Sorry.
That's good.
What information will be is
So-
affect?
The new ones, I just,
Will affect homes that are already in the process for either elevation or construction.
they're grandfathered. They're grandfathered.
Not the ones that received permits.
If they're in permitting.
Gets a permit on August 31st.
If they're in if they've submitted their deal August 31st, and they submit a complete package, not just a farce of something, because we're wondering how many people are just gonna submit something that's not really accurate just to get in the system. But if you're submitted on August 31st, you're grandfathered.
Okay, and that translates to inspectors and.
Yeah, you're still grandfathered. All of that stuff, you were submitted under the old rules. It's new submissions after September 1 that are subject to these new rules. Okay, thank you all very much. Hope you It's hard to find that 500 mark. It's hard to find it.